He still takes the field? Yep. Love it. Get a good deep breath. Get ready to roll here. Only about one thing tonight, getting the W, so gotta be around the end to do that. Get ready to roll tonight, boys. Go have some fun.
Don't get me any more fired up than I already am.
All the way to the checkers. You're fine. Nobody's got to run. Checker time, baby! Really proud of you, man. Drove your butt off tonight. We had the best car here, bud. Yeah, boys. Way to rebound. Great job. Great job, bud. Really good job. Appreciate you hanging in there with us all weekend. What a weekend. Good job. Thank you.
And welcome back to Racing in the Draft. My name is Mark. I appreciate you tuning in on this wonderful May Saturday evening to go over and look at the Wurth 400 at Texas Motor Speedway for tomorrow's Cup race. So far, we've had two pretty exciting races in the Cup and the Truck and Xfinity Racing series. And tomorrow appears to be almost perfect temperatures for a race in just outside Fort Worth and Dallas area in Texas. Crystal clear skies, 73 degrees, sunny, no chance of rain. Man, NASCAR has been on a streak of really fortunate weekends with very little to no weather issues. The Xfinity and Truck Series did get some weather implications, but practice and qualifying. But other than that, the races both went off without a hitch and no issues and no problems. So fingers crossed for tomorrow. We'll see a really exciting 267 plus maybe laps at Texas. If last year's race is any indication, we'll probably definitely have more than 267 laps. In fact, it was 276 laps last year. If you're just joining in, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. I appreciate you being here. But before we head to Texas, let's stop in Alabama first at Talladega for last week's race, the Jack Links 500 at Talladega. And that the race did not turn out the way I thought it was going to turn out, in the way of you almost always end up. What's up, Jeffrey? How we doing? Go Alex Bowman in NASCAR. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I like the 48. I'm a Hendricks fan. As you can see, I'm wearing a Larson shirt. But yeah, 48's he's quietly good. He doesn't ever really ruffle many feathers. He just kind of gets the job done, which is kind of nice to see. He's kind of quiet. But last week, Jack Links 500. I mean, I don't remember. I think it was like 2018 was the last time that we didn't have a big one at Talladega or Daytona, and we didn't have a big one last week. But honestly, for Draftkings results, it kind of turned out the same. I mean, the only real difference was we had a lot of guys who kind of started in the top 10, still ended up finishing kind of close to the top 10. So they were factors, not necessarily for the optimal lineup, but they were definitely factors for the top 15 in points, which is a little bit of a switch. Speaking of that, let's take a look at the optimal lineup from last week's Dega race. We did not have one Dominator. This is all wrong. Here, let's just clear this out, because that's all wrong. Well, actually, we can just fix it, because I'm able to do that now. Dega Spring. I think it was 188 laps, if I remember correctly. I don't know. There was definitely not any Dominators. Place differentials, we had all 6 spots for place differentials. The value picks, we had 1, 2, 3. And if anybody's wondering, that is anybody valued at $7,500 or less. We only had $800 left over, which is also a very unique position for Talladega. And finishing in the top 5, we only had 2 drivers that made the optimal lap to finish in the top 5. And that's kind of unique also. So it was definitely very unique. Laps led, I mean, William Byron led 10 laps. And other than Joey Logano leading 24 out of the top 14 in points, that's really but that's what you get with Talladega. That's what you get when they run 3 wide, 4 wide, saving fuel. You get a bunch of people who lead a bunch of different laps. And I mean, honestly, it's still, yeah, it's cool to watch and it's cool to kind of wrap your mind around it. But if you're not really pushing the issue, it's honestly for these guys not hard to run 4 wide, 10 deep, or 9 deep. It's just you just run half throttle, foot's resting on the brake a little bit, just follow the guy in line. The track is smooth enough, it's easy enough, and you save fuel until all of a sudden your crew chief goes, "Hey, all right, go race." And then they fan out and they go either single file or double file, and nobody can pass anybody because of the aero mechanism in this next gen car. And if you've listened to any of the podcasts all week, it's been everybody screaming about it. I don't know how to fix it. I'm not an engineer. I mean, I do a lot of iRacing, and I mean, even iRacing is broken. Jeffrey says, now hiring junior police. Okay. Not sure where you're hiring junior police at, but okay. Appreciate the comment. Austin Cindric started in the top 10. Ryan Preece started in the top 10. Joey Logano started in the top 10. And all made the top 14 in points. Our optimal lineup challenge after 10 races. Kyle Larson is now atop of the leaderboard with 5 after getting himself, I mean, the most points at Talladega. That has never happened in his career. I don't think he's ever had a top 5 at Talladega. So Kyle Larson ended up with a very good day. But when you don't have the big one, you don't collect a lot of the drivers that typically you do. So, all right. Enough of Talladega. That was kind of in my opinion, a boring Talladega race. And honestly, I don't watch for the big one, but I bet and do Draftkings on the odds that there's going to be a big one, because the stats show that there are. So when there's not, it's kind of nice. It's kind of unique to have something different happen. But either way, well, I mean, if anything is an indication, the last 3 races at Texas have been full of cautions. We don't really have the big one, but we have got a lot of 1 and 2 car incidents throughout the entire race. Right before coming on, I watched the highlights from the race last year. They had 12 cautions, 2 of them for stage breaks and 10 of them for incident. And I'm not sure that any of them collected any more than 3 cars, and most cars were able to stay on the lead lap. They weren't performing up to where they needed to be. And if you remember back correctly, Kyle Larson did have a wheel that was not attached when he left his pit stall early in the race, and did battle back from 2 laps down to finishing on the lead lap before he got wrecked in the final closing laps. So I was trying to figure out who potentially could dominate this race, and it's still kind of up in the air. But either way, we are headed to Texas. It is an intermediate tri-oval. It's a very unique cookie cutter. I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, they reconfigured this track, and maybe in 2000, I can't remember when they reconfigured this track, but it used to be very similar to Charlotte or Vegas and Kansas, where both turns 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 were banked the same. Well, that's now different. Turns 1 and 2 are banked at 20 degrees, and then 3 and 4 are banked at 24 degrees. So you have 2 unique sides to this track and how they get run. And running up anywhere into the higher end of turns 1 and 2 does not work. It is about a 1.5 to 2 groove off of the bottom, where 3 and 4 you can run. There's probably 3 or 4 different grooves that you can run out of 3 and 4 until you exit turn 4 and it flattens out. And when I mean it flattens out, it goes from 24 degrees, I think, down to, I think it's like 10 degrees. It's crazy how flat, once they get to the start finish line, this racetrack really becomes. And then you get a little bit of a bank in turn 1 and 2, but it's not much. 20 degrees in the speeds they're running is not enough. So they really have to slow down going into turns 1 and 2. the apex of the corner, if you can look on here, is way over here. Well, when you enter the corner coming here, you can't even really see the apex of this corner. So trying to judge where you need to brake really becomes an issue of knowing where your braking spots are. And if you miss it, you're going to go up into the area that doesn't have a whole lot of grip, and you're probably not going to make it out the other side very well. So it is very unique. It's very challenging. For a long time, it was quite boring until this next gen car. This next gen car has really added a whole new factor, because you have to choose which two ends of this track you want to have your car set up for. Do you want it set up for turns 1 and 2, or do you want it set up for turns 3 and 4? And finding the balance between the two of them is extremely difficult. So you have to give up one of these two sides of the coin. And trying to get both of them to work just doesn't seem to work. All right. The other tracks that you compare to, if you're comparing, I mean, it's so hard to compare because of the unique differences between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. But Kansas is Kansas, which is the same as Vegas, which is the same as Charlotte. So those three tracks are very similar. So I guess really you could say Charlotte is probably the closest to Texas, but because of the flat turns 1 and 2, it just races different. It's a very unique track, and until the next gen car came along, Texas was actually a very boring race. Optimal lineups for past Texas races, at least in the next gen era, are 2024, 2023, and 2022. I did add 2021 to this because there's nothing else like Texas. So really the last 3 races are the ones we really want to compare to. But we're seeing very similar things to kind of what you saw at Talladega. But it's not stack the back. It's much more stack the middle, or stack anybody that's closer to the back that is one of the better drivers. The optimal lineup here, you can see there's only one person who started in the top 10 for last year. 2023 is 1 again. 2022, there's 2, and it's just very unique. Even with the old generation car, it was much more kind of middle of the road. So it's something to kind of look at. And as we get going through this, Family Man, Mark, oh, hey, what's going on? Thank you for the compliment. Yeah, I don't get seen enough by enough eyeballs. I give enough information, that is for sure. In fact, my head usually hurts by the time I get done with this. And I have to kind of go back and try to refocus on how to actually build the lineups, because I'm like, I don't even know what I said. I almost need an AI to listen to everything I do and then be like, give me a summary at the end. I don't know that's possible. I just need to figure it out. But optimal lineups, there is a little bit of a stack of the back, kind of. It's stack the middle is really what this thing is. And it really ends up being, we don't have any, you don't see any real comparisons from one to the next. I mean, you got Chase Elliott in both of these. But you got Tyler Reddick, Brad Keselowski, Kyle Busch. They're not down there. Daniel Suarez, Ty Dillon. None of those guys are down here. Byron, Harvick, Briscoe, Chase Elliott. So Chase Elliott really seems to be the only common denominator between these two. And then if we look at the 2022 race, Tyler Reddick shows up again. Chase Briscoe shows up again. Blaney only shows up once. Briscoe shows up twice. I like to find some similarities on guys that, even if they may start towards the back, they end up finding their way to the front, either through strategy or they just not have worked their way through the field. And honestly, you can take the fall 2021 race and throw it in the trash. It does not really matter, because it was the same track but completely different car. But what I was trying to say was, we need to pay attention to what the point total was that made the optimal lineup. So up here, it was kind of for the higher price guys, it was at least 60 points or greater. For the lower price guys, here's 47 to 51, 50, and 52 is kind of the low ball. So when we take that into account, then we look at the top 15 point total for DraftKings points. This kind of gives us an idea of where we need to land in the way of DraftKings points to make at least the top 15. And what we're really shooting for is to really trying to get to that optimal. And if we kind of look at the average here, it's really at about 34, 35 DraftKings points is where we're going to really kind of need to land. And here's where their starting spots kind of came from. And it seems to be fairly evenly dispersed. In fact, you can look at the average. It's 3.2 from the top 5, 6 through 10 is 2.8, 11 through 20 is 4.2 drivers, and then 3 drivers 21 through 30, and it's only 1.8 31st or worse. And that's for the top 15 in points, and the point total average is 34.1. So this 34.1 and will become something we look at when we do the driver-by-driver breakdown throughout the rest of the show once we get to those drivers. But a lot of this is still kind of top-heavy. But we're going to have comers and goers. If you come back here and look again, laps led 39, 37. Bubba Wallace led 111 in 2023. 70 for Tyler Reddick in 2022. 29, 42. It's very spread out. There is no real unique Dominator per se. In fact, the fast laps get spread out across the board with only a 0.4 making what I would consider a Dominator type of fast lap, and only 1.2 on average for those 4 races. Family says, do you think it is more stack the back strategy so the better cars are more balanced during practice? I noticed a lot of good drivers in the back. For practice, it was unique for practice. I thought it was very, very interesting that in practice, typically most of these tracks, number one, when practice started, the track and the air temperature, I think, was in the mid 60s. By the end of practice, the track had warmed up into close to 90, and the air temperature was in the mid to high 70s. And by the time the Xfinity race started, it was about 80. And the track was pretty warm. The interesting part was the Group 2 drivers were as fast, if not faster, than Group 1, which is typically the opposite. Typically, the guys that go out on the track first, where the temperatures of the track are cooler, the air temperature is cooler, and the rubber hasn't been laid down into the racing groove yet. Now, they had the truck race the night before, didn't really have any weather, so there was still some rubber that was embedded into the track from the truck race, but you see that at most tracks when they start practice on Saturday anyways, because there was some type of action going on either Friday night, or even Saturday morning before the Cup Series takes the track. And still, the first group is typically faster than the second group. This was kind of flipped. Now, we also end up typically having a little bit of the slower cars going, or the guys that, by the metrics, finished worse in the previous race, and the guys who finished better. And we kind of had a little bit of inverse. We had some guys that typically would be in Group 1 were in Group 2, Group 2 being in Group 1. I mean, like you had Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, Bell, and those that were all in Group 1. Those were fast drivers. But Group 2 came out and were running as fast, if not faster, than Group 1. It was a little inversive. It was very strange to see how practice kind of worked its way through. But once we finally kind of got down to it, honestly, Group 1 and Group 2 were about equal. Andrew, what's going on? Think we will see all the spins in the Cup Series. You were 2 points from first in the Xfinity and fell on the last lap. Can't seem to break through. Yeah, it's just. I mean, that's the crazy thing about DFS is it. And I think we talked about this last week. It is the most rewarding and heartbreaking of most of the fantasy stuff. That literally within one lap, you can have two different swings of emotion. You can go from being like, well, this sucks, I'm not going to make any money, to all of a sudden finishing top 10 in the Chrome Horn and winning $1,000. To being in the top 10 in the Chrome Horn and in one lap, literally making zero. It is the swings are just astronomical. And if you're weak of heart, just don't pay attention and wait till the race is over and then take a look. And then be like, okay, I made money, or oh, I didn't make money. I don't know. I watch it because I'd like to understand the ups and downs and why certain things happen, and that just kind of gives me a better idea when I start to talk about all this on what those swings are. So yeah, it's you can ask if Matt's still here, Family Man. He and I have talked about it quite a bit, and I think he is absolutely correct that NASCAR DFS probably is one of the hardest lineups to build. Number one, to get separation from others. You find a lot more people with very similar lineups, and to kind of get those sleeper picks or, 2%, 3% owned players, drivers, whatever you want to call it, that you can kind of find to win those tournaments. Tournaments are much harder to win in NASCAR DFS than most of the other sports, where I would almost argue the opposite. I think it's almost easier to figure out a cash lineup than a tournament lineup. Now anything can kind of happen because you're still striving for that optimal lineup. Is still honestly, whether you're running your goal in a tournament is to try to find the optimal lineup, or to have something that's super unique that is going to beat everyone else. It's kind of like back in the day having the Ty Dillon that would make an optimal lineup and only 2% of the field would have him, and you happen to fall on him. The problem is with these cars being so equal now, and the teams being so equal, and the drivers being fairly equal, you still have a lot of separation from the top 10 guys to the rest of the field. But as far as teams go and engineers go, the top 25 drivers, all their engineers are great. Matt says the variance in NASCAR is insane. Football is so much easier to build for. Yeah. And honestly, after you kind of talking me through it this past NFL season, I absolutely agree with you 100%. And I honestly think that baseball, now that I've started to watch, and I've always been a baseball fan, but I've definitely paid a lot more attention to it in the way of betting and how DFS is built. Baseball is very similar to football. You've got the really good guys, and you got some guys that are pretty good that if they get the right pitcher park type of combination, they can separate your lineups from everyone else, and that can easily take down a tournament. And Matt, you can answer this or not. Do you find it would be easier to build a tournament lineup for football? Okay. Would you find it easier to build a cash lineup for NASCAR or a cash lineup for football? I think it seems to be almost easier to build a cash lineup for NASCAR compared to football. That's just, I also am much more of a NASCAR geek. All right. Either way, enough of that. We'll be here forever because we got a ton of data to go over. Kyle Larson. So if you're new here, Kyle Larson, this is kind of his driver page. He's $11,000 in Draftkings. When we are comparing the last 3 races at Texas because those are the next generation car. Las Vegas from earlier this year, so just a couple weeks ago. Kansas from the fall race last year. These are all 1.5-mile tracks, so we're all comparing kind of similar tracks. And only because Texas has only had 3 next-gen races at it. You go back to 2021, it's a whole nother car, it's a whole nother everything. So I don't put that into the mix. So once we get enough Texas races with this next-gen car, if they don't change the car completely again, we'll start to be able to build just on that. They also may change Texas completely too. So I don't think they will, because the next-gen car is providing a pretty good venue, and the crowds are starting to come back. Either way. So his price tag is $11,000, but the 5 races we're comparing to are also down here. And if we look at these 5 races, Kyle Larson, surprisingly, has a 19.2 average finish position, 13.5 average running position. Texas is not good, has not been kind to Kyle Larson at the next-gen era. Where Vegas and Kansas, he's been extremely good at. Both these 2 top 10s came from Vegas and Kansas, not from Texas. He does have a 13.5 average running position, and until he lost his wheel last year at Texas, he was running a pretty dominant race. He did end up finishing 21st in that race, but he lost the wheel, lost 2 laps, got the 2 laps back, and then got spun in the final 10 laps of the race. He has 18 total starts at Texas, and once again, we've had the track change and we've had a car change over these 18 starts. He does have 1 win here. He did win the Xfinity race today, but Kyle Larson is in a class of his own when it comes to the Xfinity series, and he says anytime he goes into that, it's very Kyle Busch-esque of him, which is a little strange for Kyle Larson because usually he's kind of quiet. He says he literally wants to stomp the you-know-what out of the competition. He wants to lap the entire field. He didn't quite do that today, mostly because of track position and the way the cautions fell, but he absolutely was the fastest car, and he didn't even know he was going to race the Xfinity race until Wednesday. And it wasn't a car that was set up really for him. It was set up for Connor Zillich, and that's the car he got into. It was a JRM car, which is kind of a Hendricks car, so not too odd or weird, but either way, he still started 20th and ended up finishing first, and did it in pretty confident way. I wouldn't say dominant, but I think Justin Allgaier had not wrecked, would have been a really good race between he and Kyle Larson. But even if we look at those 18 total starts for Kyle Larson, he's got a 19.1 average finish. Texas has not been super kind to Kyle Larson. If we look, all right, so we now get into our practice laps and practice speeds. Oh, those are actually up here too. So he was in Group 2, which is here. He is starting 4th from qualifying. And in practice, he was 4th fastest in single lap. He did 29 total laps of practice, and he was 7th fastest in 10 lap average. All right, so what does that really mean? So this, cream colored line running through here is the average of all the drivers over 35 laps. Not everyone ran 35 laps. Some ran 45 laps. Denny Hamlin ran like 45 laps. But the majority of the people ran between 30 and 35 laps. So I stretch this out to 35. But this line here is the average. And it's fairly flat. We got a little bit of oscillation to it. Austin Cindric was the fastest in 10 lap, 15 lap, 20 lap, 25 lap. And then finally at lap 30, I think it was Kyle Larson that was fastest at lap 30. Or somebody else had the fastest. No, Carson Hocevar? Either way, Austin Cindric dominated the middle portion of practice with speeds. So that will be the control car that we look at. This is the average of all the cars. And then in this kind of yellow is Kyle Larson's speed. And we see he fires off by lap 4, very, very quick. Then he kind of comes back up, and kind of runs about the average. He does come in and pit here, and they make some adjustments, and he comes back out and fires off very, very quick, and he is faster than the average and faster than Austin Cindric on a longer run. Now, they made some adjustments. They couldn't change tires, but they did make some adjustments to the car, which did make his car a little bit faster. So, little unsure on exactly what that's going to give us for the race. As long as Kyle Larson doesn't either get wrecked, wreck himself, or have a wheel come off on pit road, he's probably going to end up somewhere in a top 5 or top 10 spot. So what does that actually mean? All right, well, he's starting in 4th. His average finish is 19th. So we can adjust this and play with these. Well, if he starts in 4th and finishes in 19th, which is his average, even if he happens to have 39 fast laps and 51 laps led, he gets 39.3 points. Well, that's probably enough to get him into the top 15 in points, but that's nowhere close to get him to that 60-point optimal range that we would need for somebody priced at $11,000. So what does he really need to kind of get there? Well, let's say he finishes in 5th. That puts it there if he leads 51 laps. That's kind of on the extreme side. So let's leave him with a 5th place finish, and let's take his laps led down to 25. What does that do for us? 61.8. That would probably put him in the optimal lineup conversation, at least top 7 or top 8. And that's if he has 39 fast laps. That's an extreme amount of fast laps for this because of the tire fall off and just the strategies that will end up getting played. I think it's going to be probably closer to like 15. That takes him to 51. Well, that doesn't put him in the optimal lineup. So if he does that, he would need to finish he'd have to finish 1st. So starting in 4th is a little bit dangerous. Kyle Larson has a tendency to, if he can get to the front, stay up front, he's going to end up leading more laps, which that's where this kind of comes into play. And he goes to 50. That takes him to 67.25. Kyle Larson is one of the ones, as long as you think he's going to not have any major issues, and he also got some practice because he got to race in the Xfinity race. If you think he's going to improve and have a top 5 finish and lead some laps, he's in the conversation for somebody you want to put into your driver lineup. If you think he's going to finish his average finish, you definitely want to leave him out. So this becomes this is a flip of the coin. This is a very unique track. This is not a Kyle Larson dominant type of racetrack. He has the ability to do that as long as the other factors don't screw him up. So with that being said, there is a risk to taking Kyle Larson. There's also a risk to not taking Kyle Larson. I'm probably going to be in the ballpark of 35% ownership, maybe 40% ownership with Kyle Larson, especially since he did do so well in today's race. But there's a little buyer beware here. And there's a lot of buyer beware with a lot of drivers for this race. I don't have any real clear direction on where to go with tomorrow's race. There is no real clear defined, oh my gosh, this guy. I mean, Kyle Larson at Las Vegas. It's like literally you can close your eyes and just put Kyle Larson in. Like before we even get to Las Vegas, he's going to typically either dominate and win or dominate and finish top 3. There is no in between with Kyle Larson at places like Vegas and Kansas and a Charlotte and those types of things. He's just really good at these 1.5 mile tracks. He's good at a lot of other places. Texas, though, for a 1.5 mile track, kind of throws him a little bit of a loop. William Byron, on the other hand, does really, really well and has continuously done very, very well at Texas. So this is probably one of the people that I would probably lean towards, even though he was not super fast in practice. He was pretty consistent. He is starting outside pole. He's starting in 2nd. He's 10,800, so he is fairly expensive. What's up, Wyatt? Let's go, Larson. Yeah, he had a great day today. His cup, his cup next gen stats are not the best here though. Um, so it's a little buyer beware. I'll have some ownership in Kyle Larson, but buyer beware with him. Um, William Byron, though, on the other hand, this is more William Byron's type of track. 10,800 starting in second. He's got one win in the last 5 races that we're comparing to. He's got 4 top 5s, 5 top 10. So all 5 of these races, he's finished in the top 10. He's got an average finish of 3.4. He finished this Texas race in 2024 in third. He was 15th in single lap and 20th in 10 lap consecutive average. And what does that look like? Well, he had one hiccup here. Okay. I mean, one is okay. This little blip over here was a little bit strange, but it looks like he did the same thing that Kyle Larson did. And it looks like he came in for adjustments because he came back and fired off faster than Austin Cindric and faster than the average. William Byron is going to be, if somebody said you've got to pick a winner for tomorrow, pick one. I'm picking William Byron to win this race tomorrow, and potentially be extremely dominant. Looking at the stats, looking at the numbers, looking at everything else, if I've got to pick a dominator, it's probably going to be William Byron. He is starting outside pole. Let's change this around a little bit. Let's say he does have the dominant car. He finishes in first. Let's say he leads 56 laps. It's 66.75. That puts him in the optimal. The problem is if he goes out and does that and has an issue with a late restart and gets shuffled back to 15th, well, he's no longer optimal, even leading 56 laps. In fact, he's barely in the top 15. You missed qualifying. W2F, what happened? What happened left? I mean, nothing. It was actually pretty. I mean, Kyle Larson qualified in 4th. William Byron qualified in 2nd. Carson Hocevar, I think, got the pole. But I mean, Front Row Motorsports, or not Front Row, Spire has been extremely fast at these mile and a halves in practice and qualifying, and then they poop the bed. It's just what Spire does at these racetracks. One of these times they're not going to, and honestly, tomorrow could line up very, very well for a Carson Hocevar type of day. But we'll get to him momentarily. So either way, I mean, I really like the William Byron pick. So it's a little buyer beware. Even if he does lead 56 laps and finishes 15th because of a late race issue, he falls out of the optimal. Almost falls out of the top 15. He finishes in 6th, he's close. If he finishes 3rd, he's right there on the edge. So I still think he is the most consistent driver at Texas. I'll put him as my number 1 pick currently, even though he's ranked 4th. But I'll take him as an opportunity to finish really, really well. Denny Hamlin has decent records here at Texas. He's got 3 wins out of the 35 total starts. But like I said, the car's changed and the track has changed over that course in time, and he still has done fairly, fairly well. Starting in the 8th position, his practice speeds were 16th in single lap, 12th in 10 lap consecutive average. Got a 15.6 average finish at the 5 races we're comparing to. He did finish 30th in this race last year, but was leading with 2 laps to go. Before the restart of the final start, the one before that, he ended up wrecking. And that moved him all back to 30th. But he was running top 3 when he had that issue. His practice speeds were extremely close to Austin Cindric, and he was faster than the average for most of the run. He did have the longest run. I think he ran 45 laps in practice. 45 laps in practice. So he's got and what this tells me is both Austin Cindric and Denny Hamlin have both very, very well and good balanced cars that are not. It's when you start to see like this jagged spot here for Austin Cindric, and I'm not that worried with one. It's when you see 4 and 5 of those throughout, and we've got a couple of drivers that I'll pinpoint that. Those are the ones I go, that car is super unbalanced. It's going to take them a long time to get the car into the track. One of them is going to be one we look at here very, very shortly. But Denny Hamlin starting in 8th, we've got a little bit of place differential. His average finish is 14th, so it's a 30.85. But if we think he can finish 4th, that takes him to 51.85. I don't think we're going to see any real true dominators, so this is really going to kind of play. If anybody's going to dominate, it's going to be William Byron. That's just my pick. And if he does that, then I mean this still comes into play because you're still looking to get to that 60-point optimal. Because if we go back and look at these optimals, now nobody dominated. You had an 81.35 last race at Texas for Chase Elliott and a 75.75. Those are the highest point totals at an 82.6. We haven't had anybody get over 83 at any of these. Well, that was the fall of 21, so that one doesn't count. Different car. But an 82.6, a 75, and an 81. On the low end, it's 50. So there's a very, very fine pinpoint of point totals. Well, at 51.85, it's on the low end, so we're going to need Denny Hamlin to do a little bit more work than this. Denny Hamlin's going to need to probably finish 2nd behind William Byron and lead 20 laps, 25 laps. That puts him to 60.1. That puts him in the optimal range. So Denny Hamlin, lead 25 laps, start in 8th, finish in 2nd behind William Byron, and he's going to be your second position for optimal lineup. Now, that's a really tough scenario to nail right in the head. But Tyler Reddick, who has struggled a little bit this year, runs Texas typically extremely well. He does have one win here at Texas 2023. When did he win? Reddick finished 4th in 2024. 2022, he won this race. So he's one of the drivers who's finished twice in the optimal lineup out of 3. So Tyler Reddick, I definitely like the place differential potential here with Tyler Reddick starting in 17th. He was 8th in single lap, 5th in 10 lap consecutive average. He's got an average finish here of 15.8, but has a 10.3 average running position. Finished 4th in this race last year, like we just said. And out of 6 total starts at Texas, he's got a 9.3 average finish. His practice speeds, I mean, once again, we had this one spike out of all this, but if we take that out and just draw the line, so that was probably my guess is either he either slipped in a corner and caught it, okay, no harm, no foul, or he got behind a slower car that was either coming off or going onto pit road, and it's slow to speed up. But for the most part, he's pretty consistent, and he's running with or better than average for almost all of the race, almost all of practice, and was right there with Austin Cindric for most of it. But then he goes and qualifies 17th. Well, his fallback may be our chance to take a spot. So if he leads his normal average laps led at the 5 races we're comparing to, which is 36, and has 25 fast laps, even if he slips to 10th, that puts him at 61.25. Well, what happens if Tyler Reddick has a really good day and finishes 3rd behind Denny Hamlin? And let's say he only leads 10 laps. That's a 68.5. So if you can get a William Byron, Denny Hamlin, Tyler Reddick top 3, with all of them kind of sharing the workload on laps led, they'll end up getting fast laps because of it. That ends up being 3 optimal drivers at a very, very high price tag. If you end up trying to run that it's going to be, you're going to have to end up taking Chad Fincham in your lineup, potentially. I don't even know what that looks like. Let's see. What does that look like? Yeah, so if you were to take a William Byron, Denny Hamlin, Tyler Reddick, you've got 18,500 left over. You can take a Ty Dillon. That starts to give you a little bit more wiggle room. Then you can take a Ryan Preece. And you have $6,400 left over. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. could be potentially a lineup. We'll see if any of those guys end up fitting. That's what I'm saying. It takes a whole lot to fit those three guys in at 10,200 to 10,800. So keep that in mind. To try to put these three expensive guys in a lineup is going to be tough, but they could easily be there. So Ryan Blaney, I think Byron, Reddick, Ty Dillon is a good way to start some lineups. Absolutely. I think when we get to Ty Dillon, he actually runs Texas as well as most anybody, which is really surprising. And he's running a lot of races really, really well this year. Talladega Racing has quietly been the sleeper team of the Cup Series so far this year. They're starting to make a little bit more noise because they're having really good finishes back to back to back. So, yeah, we'll get to AJ and Ty Dillon momentarily. But Ryan Blaney, $10,000 starting in 24th. Well, he was 24th in single lap. Not very good. He was 4th in 10 lap. Okay, that's better. So his long run speed might be not bad. But Texas has not been super kind to Ryan Blaney. Like, it has not been very kind to Kyle Larson. In fact, I really need to pull that up. Let's see. Texas, because throwing Kansas and Vegas in here, it doesn't really show the true. All right, so we know in 2024, Ryan Blaney finished in 33rd. In 2023, Ryan Blaney finished in 28th. And in 2022, he finished 4th. Okay, so he had a 4th place finish in 2022. But it has not been super kind to him. Out of 15 total starts, he does have one win, but a 19th place average finish. Kind of similar to Kyle Larson. All right. And this is kind of what I'm talking about. He fires off extremely slow. Okay, first lap or two, you're trying to feel out the grip. He comes out and he does okay. Then he starts to get a little more ragged. And it's just all over the board. This is the part that I find to be a little bit concerning on what are we doing here? Because it seems like he came out and he ran really well. Like you said, he was pretty fast in the 10-lap average. But then it just gets kind of wonky. And this is the part that's concerning, that he doesn't have a long-run balanced speed car, which is a little unusual for number one, Ryan Blaney, and number two, for Penske. Usually they have much more consistent. In fact, I mean, you can look, Austin Cindric is his teammate, and Austin Cindric has a nice, almost flat type of line compared to Ryan Blaney. So I think Ryan Blaney potentially gets a fair amount of ownership because it's Ryan Blaney and he's starting in 24th, but his average finish is 20th at this style track. He's only got one top 5 in the last 3 races at Texas. So even if he goes and finishes in 20th, he just hits the top 15 in optimal. But let's say he goes and finishes 7th at 61. Well, if he doesn't lead any laps, It's 58.5. Well, if we think those other 3 drivers are going to do as well as they are, he's not making the optimal lineup. Now, can Ryan Blaney potentially go out and have a really good race and finish in second and lead 20 laps? Sure. And now we're at 73.5. That's one of the higher point totals of any of the Texas races. So, is it possible? Sure. Are stats showing that Ryan Blaney is not great at Texas? Yeah. Was his practice speeds a little wonky? Yeah. Well, if you want to go against all the data, and I'll have some ownership in Ryan Blaney. I'm not saying not to, but I'm not going to be super heavy on Ryan Blaney either. Christopher Bell at $9,800. Boy, he struggled in the fall in the 2024 race here. He did finish 17th, but he backed the car into the wall, so they must have done some decent repairs. And I guess when you have 12 cautions, you're able to at least stay on the lead lap. But he's starting in 16th. His practice speeds were not great. He was 25th and 25th. He's got a 14.8 average finish, and for the 7 total starts at Texas, it's a 13.1. Decent numbers, but it's kind of where you're finishing where you're starting. Now, Christopher Bell's not typically that way. Typically, if he's starting 16th, he'll improve into the top 10. And if you looked at his practice speeds, they're not awful, but they're not great. It's a little goes off and fires off pretty well, but then falls off pretty quickly, and just seems to struggle a little bit. So, a little concerned with practice speeds. These final speeds look to be actually pretty good. The beginning of the run looked a little ragged. I don't know if they maybe had some issues and just had to fix it. But he's starting in 16th, so there is some room. So if we play with the numbers here, if he's starting in 16th, and let's say he gets up to 5th, if he can lead 24 laps, that puts him in there. So I'll have some ownership in Christopher Bell. I have a little bit more faith in the average finishes with Christopher Bell compared to Ryan Blaney. So I'll probably have a little bit more ownership in Christopher Bell, but a little bit of buyer beware here a little bit. I mean, he's got 3 wins, so if anybody's willing to either throw craziness into strategies, it'll be Bell, or not throw anything to strategy and just run a straight up race, which could also burn you just as bad on the other side. You get I'm trying to think. You get a Carson Osvar that does a crazy Hail Mary and takes 2 tires when everybody else takes 4 and gets track position and is able to fend everybody off. And because so, Christopher Bell now falls further back. I'm just kind of throwing different scenarios. You know, other guys that are willing to do stuff like that. Brad Keselowski has got to start throwing Hail Marys. These guys that are really, really far back in points but have decently fast cars. Where Christopher Bell's got three race wins. He doesn't have to do anything extreme. He's already locked into the playoffs in a fairly good spot. So, Joe Logano, here's another one that probably needs to start throwing some. They've got to start doing something different than everybody else in the field. So if we're looking to kind of do something different, either stay out longer than everybody else, or short pit, or do any of those things, Joe Logano easily could be one of those that needs to do it, because he has definitely, right there, Brett Keselowski, just has not had the start to the year that he needs. Now, it's also an odd year. It's an odd year where Joe Logano does well in even years. I don't know. There is something to it, though. I mean, if you go back and track it, it's crazy. But if we look at Joe Logano's lap times compared to Austin Cindric's, they're not awful. We got a couple little peaks here, but they're not anything that goes past average. So his practice speeds actually, even on the long run, look to be pretty good. He was 31st in single lap, but he was 18th in 10-lap consecutive average. It does not show up until you start to look at this chart here, and you go, actually, he was better on average for most of his practice. So, kind of makes me kind of wonder, there's something a little sneaky here going on with Joe Logano. He does have a 12.6 average finish. He does have one win at Texas. So starting in 27th, there's a lot of room to run here. So for a place differential play, even finishing 13th, this is actually a pretty decent play. So if he gets his average finish, let's take out his laps led, because I'm not sure if you start in 27th and finish 13th, you're going to lead a whole lot of laps, unless you really do some weird off-cycle strategy stuff. It's 46.7. That's kind of in the middle of the top 15 and optimal. Well, all it's going to take is for him to probably finish 7th, and he's real close to that 60-point optimal. So he doesn't. All he's got to do is get a solid top 10 for Draftkings, and he's definitely in play and doesn't have to lead a lap. I definitely like some Joey Logano at 9,500. It gives you a little bit more wiggle room, so you end up taking. Where was that at? Oops. All right. So let me pull this over here again. If we take, let's say you take Denny Hamlin out and you put in Joey Logano at 1,200 more, well, take Stenhouse Jr. out. Now you're at $7,400. Now you can take a pole sitter, dangerous, especially Carson Osevar. Austin Cindric starting in third, who was pretty much the most consistent and fastest in practice. And you've already got one person that we think may dominate. Not saying that Cindric and Byron can't, but you put the two of those in, and that could play. So I definitely think that a Joey Logano play is definitely in play. And typically, I don't like Joey Logano. Mostly because I don't like Joey Logano. But I try not to let my bias affect how I bet. Even though I know it does, a little bit. But if I think, Matt Gask, I was going to ask you if you think it's too risky playing Byron and Cindric in the same lineup. For multiple lineups, yes. Would I have maybe one lineup, kind of like we were just talking about a second ago, where you've got Byron and Cindric in? I don't mind running a lineup. I'm not going to run probably more than one lineup with them together. I think that gets a little risky. Mostly because when we go back and look at past year optimals, you can only see one person starting in the top 15, one person starting in the top 15. You've got two people starting in the top 4. So it definitely is possible, and William Byron's one of them. Tyler Reddick's the other one. So, I mean, yes. Can that play? Sure. Does it play easily? I think you got to ask for more things to be right than to be wrong. By doing that, just my personal thought about it. So, but yeah, you could play it. Like I said, I'll probably have one lineup that has that combination. Chase Briscoe, 9,700, actually runs this race really well. He was another one who got tied up late in last year's race and ended up still finishing 6th, but he had a small problem about halfway through the race, I think it was. I watched it pretty quickly, so I just remember him having a small problem. But he ended up finishing 6th, so must have been okay. 9,300, 12.4 average finish over the 5 races we're comparing to, and if we look at just Texas, he's got a 10.8 average finish. Pretty good and consistent finishes here. His practice speeds were not bad, 20th in single lap, 8th in 10 lap. And if we look at his speeds, he's got 2 hiccups late in the run. It almost looks like he kind of gets a little slip here and then comes in and has repairs because he comes back and fires off faster than where he was and then slips again or has traffic issues. I think Austin Cindric or Chase Briscoe could actually end up being a decent play. And if he gets his average finish, which is 11th or 12th, don't lead any laps, don't any fast laps, that's 43.4. That's pretty solid in the top 15 in points. What is he going to, can he finish in 5th? It still doesn't quite put him there, but probably if you finish in 5th, you're going to have a few more fast laps. Go to 9 puts him there. 22nd to 5th, 9. I mean, Chase Briscoe he's in play. I'm not going to say that he's what I consider one of my favorite plays, but he's in play. Chase Elliott, the winner from last year's race. That was an amazing race last year, actually. When I went back and watched it, I forgot how good of a race it actually was. $9,000 starting in 29th for Chase Elliott. But Chase Elliott, it has been an unusual year for Chase Elliott. He quietly has done well while still not doing well. If that makes any sense whatsoever. What's the trend line on Chase Elliott? Chase Elliott for the last 10 races has an 11.1 average finish. In fact, he's got one of the best average finishes out of everyone. It's crazy. Ryan Preece has a 16.5. Chase has 11.1. Denny Hamlin has an 11.0. William Byron has an 8.6. Yeah, he's like the third best average finish over the last 10 races in the Cup Series. So he's quietly been having a bad year, but a good year. It's really strange. He tends to just always end up being there at the end of these races. So I have no qualms with thinking that he'll be there at the end of this race, but you want to talk about a mishandling, not balanced car? 1, 2, 3 spots in his practice where he is just not good. And this is what I talk about. I go, okay, no wonder you qualified 29th. Your car handles like crap. Now, Gustafson, Chase Elliott, Hendrick, engineers will get it figured out. I mean, once again, Chase Elliott's definitely in play. Finishing 13th, I think with a mishandling car like that, I'm not sure you go and lead a ton of laps. So we'll just put that at 0 just to see where we got to get to get to the 60-point optimal threshold. 8th with 6 fast laps, 7 fast laps, which is easily possible. So, can Chase Elliott get up to 8th place? Maybe. His average finish is 11th. Notice if he just gets to 11th, it's 53.15. Chase Elliott's definitely in play also. We've got a lot of options, $9,000 and up. The question is, if you said, hey, who are you holding? Who are you going to take out? I'm going to take out Ryan Blaney. I'm going to take out Chase Briscoe. I'm probably going to take out Kyle Larson from that group. I like Byron. I like Hamlin. I like Reddick. Bell. I'll leave Bell out of this group. Logano I'll put in because he doesn't have to go and win. Logano's got to finish 7th. Elliott's got to finish. 11th puts him at 53. What do we say he needed to get to? 8th? Yeah, 8th. So Chase Elliott finishes 8th. Joey Logano finishes in 7th. And you've got 2 guys that are above 60 points. Without winning, without leading a lap, really. Yeah, I like both of those calls. Kyle Busch, Number 1 mile and a half's next gen setup just is not good, and practice was not good for Kyle Busch. Qualifying was not good for Kyle Busch. Average finishes a mile and a half in the next gen era are not good for Kyle Busch. There's nothing really good here. I mean, it wasn't that he was awful in practice, but I mean, these guys were so tight in practice. It's absolutely crazy. But Kyle Busch does not do well in dirty air in this next gen car. Kyle Busch can be in the top 3. He's okay. He gets mired back in this muck, and he just gets so frustrated. It's just it's not a good fit. And I think at best he gets his average finish at 20th, and that's 31.5 points. I don't have a whole lot of interest in Kyle Busch. Sure. Can anybody fire off potential and get a good luck strategy? Sure. I'm not going to risk my lineups with Kyle Busch. Does that mean I'm not going to have him in any lineups? No, I'll probably have him in like 4 to 6. So that's like 5 to 7% of my lineups. I'll take Kyle Busch. Just for the simple one-off that it might happen. Likelihood, I mean, Bubba Wallace, in my opinion, even starting at 9th, it's probably a better play than taking Kyle Busch. At least he led a ton of laps last year and the year prior. Finished in 7th last year, and that was after spinning. He's got a 16th place average finish over the last 5 races that were the 5 races we're comparing to. His practice speeds were... He fired off and slowed up a little much. He came in and looks like he got adjustments and fired back off and then slowed up again. So it looks like he's fast on the short runs, by what this is telling me. It's not that he's got a completely mishandling race car. It looks like it's a really loose race car, is what this looks like. It's either really loose or really tight. One of the two things are happening. So what does this mean? If he gets his average finish, he goes to 28.3. So if he finishes 6th, 51.3, but that's if he leads 27 laps. That's a lot to ask if you're finishing in 6th. So let's say he has 7. That puts him right in the middle of the top 15 in points. Bubba Wallace is a tough play, in my opinion, at $8,600. It's a little pricey, and he's kind of starting in what I would almost consider no man's land. So, Alex Bowman, to wherever Jeffrey went, we're now to your guy. But he's also now hiring junior police officers. For what, I don't know. He was one of the first guys that came in the chat and was like, go Alex Bowman. And now hiring junior police officers. I'm like, okay. Alex Bowman, $8,400, starting in 11th. He had some bad luck last year. He finished 37th. Got taken out early. 7th in single lap, 6th in 10 lap consecutive average, 18.2 average finish. Let's look at his practice speeds. Ends up firing off fairly quick, but then just kind of gets a little inconsistent here. So he comes in and probably pits here and then fires back off, and I think they adjusted whatever they needed to. Starting in 11th, this kind of feels very similar to a Bubba Wallace play. It's just tough to get anything without getting a top 3. And even a top 3 only gets him to 51. Well, at 8,400, the optimal drops down to 55. I'm not sure if that does it. He would need to have what? 15 fast laps? More than that even. It's a tough way to go, and I don't think he goes out and dominates. I don't think he goes and leads 40 laps. He just has never done that at Texas, and that's what he would need to do and have a 3rd place finish. So, I don't know. Alex Bowman and Bubba Wallace both are they're playable. They're just tough plays. Ross Chastain, who almost as much as who was I talking about earlier? Chase Elliott with an 11th place average finish. That's who we were talking about before, right? Yeah. No, let's see. Denny was at 11th. Chase Elliott 11.1. Ross Chastain actually has quietly had a 14.9 average finish for the last 10 races. I mean, we start to look down. I mean, that's better than Ryan Blaney, better than Joey Logano, Chase Briscoe, Kyle Busch, Bubba Wallace, Alex Bowman, Ty Gibbs, Chris Buescher. I mean, that puts him in the top 10 of average finishes for the start of the season. Ross Chastain has been qualifying absolutely god-awful. He was in the top 5 going towards the end of the race in the 2024 race at Texas. He's got an average of 10.6. This is one of the better average finishes that we've seen so far. And he's got one win. I think it was Kansas last year? Or was it one of the Texas races? I can't remember. It's not Texas, so it had to be either Vegas or Kansas from earlier. So, and his practice speeds were, I mean, this looks like Chase Elliott. The two guys with one of the best average finishes to start this year just have mishandling cars. I mean, and this is what I talk about by mishandling. It's just ragged. You just don't want to see that. But we've talked about this before with Ross in practices, and they've actually ended up having a decent car in race trim. Starting in 31st, he doesn't need to do a whole lot. Finishing 14th, you've got 53. If you do that, you're probably not leading a ton of laps. So let's just take the laps led out. And let's give him the 9th place finish. Since we've already given everybody else the 7th and 8th place finish, we'll give Ross the 9th place finish. 59.7. Well, at his price tag at 8,200, the optimal drops down a little bit for him to hit, which is now 55 points. So Ross Chastain is absolutely in play. The problem is because he's starting in 31st, he's probably going to be in play for a lot of people. He's going to be one of the top 5% or 5 to 8 drivers in ownership. Ty Gibbs starting in the 6th position has an average finish of 18.6 at the 5 races we're comparing to. And at 3 races at Texas, he's only got one top 20 with a 22nd place finish. Not great. Practice speeds, though, were as good, if not better, than Austin Cindric. In fact, if you ask Clint Boyer, he thinks Ty Gibbs is the next best thing to slice bread at Texas. Whatever. But he was very, very fast in practice. In fact, when I was deciding who my comparison driver was going to be, it was split between do I take Austin Cindric or Ty Gibbs. And honestly, the long run speed was better with Ty Gibbs than it was with Austin Cindric. But I mean, we are literally talking about 10th, less than tenths, 500ths of a second separating Ty Gibbs and Austin Cindric. And they're both starting in the top 5, so they both should be very, very fast. But he gets his average finish of 20th, and that's a 12.2. It makes it very, very tough. This is a situation that if you think Ty Gibbs can win and lead a few laps, that puts him in the optimal. Anything other than a win, though, 4th place, and I doubt you lead that many laps if you do that. 44.7 puts him in the top 15 in points. But I'm not sure that puts him in the optimal. That's really low. That would be on the really, really low side at $8,400. I don't think that fits. Now, can you still make money? Absolutely. Can he be a cash play? Absolutely. But we're asking a lot for a guy who's had a rough start to the year, but in the last 5 races has rebounded extremely well. And they've made a lot of really good uh, changes at the 54 team. So they've got a lot of strong people behind him. So can he get to a 4th place finish? Can he win? Yeah, it's possible. I think there's other drivers that probably stand a better chance of winning. Long shot win would be Ty Gibbs. Chris Buescher, $7,800 starting in the 12th position. 16.6 average finish, 15.8 average running position. He finished 15th in this race last year and a 21.4 average finish at Texas. But he was actually not bad in practice. Little more ragged than I want to see, but he still is underneath the average line, and a lot of times he's better than Austin Cindric. Just didn't run as many laps as I would have liked to have seen. Starting in the 12th position, if he gets his average finish, that's not going to be good. But if we think he can make it to, say, 5th, we haven't put anybody in 5th. 48.5. At 7,800, the optimal lowers down to about 50-ish points. So, potential cash play. Not sure how strong I feel about him being a tournament play. And honestly, the only person that I potentially see goes out and is a true dominator is still just William Byron, which takes everybody else out of that picture. And starting in 12th, I don't think you get out there and dominate and lead 40 or 50 laps. So if you think a 5th place 48.05 points is enough, like I said, for a cash tournament, maybe. Josh Berry starting in 7th. He was 6th in single lap, 23rd in 10-lap consecutive average. This is with his win at Vegas. He still has just a 17 or a 25th place average finish. Mile and a half have not been super kind to Josh Berry, especially Texas. Like I said, he did win the Vegas race and he won it walking away. So they definitely had a car that was set up really, really well. But I think I also remember that practice, he was very, very fast. And he actually is not bad here. A little more ragged than I want to see, but he kind of levels it out towards the end of practice. So I don't know if it was just maybe the car was too loose and it tightened up, or typically it'll go the other way. But I guess you could be tight and then it gets loose on the longer run. Usually it gets tight. But either way, or maybe they made an adjustment and they were able to get it flattened out a little bit. But he's kind of sitting in no man's land. Potentially could be a cash play, but his average finishes of 25th, I mean, 18th being generous in my opinion. Starting 7th, he's kind of like Ty Gibbs. He's going to need to win to really make the optimal. Even if he finishes where he starts, does that play? 41.2? No, it doesn't. I'm not sure that makes cash lineups work. 4th, 47.2. That puts him close to being a cash play, but he's not a tournament play. So if you're looking for cash, I mean, Josh Berry could fall into that. Brad Keselowski, oh my God, I don't know what to do with Brad Keselowski anymore. He keeps doing this every week, and he keeps just performing awfully. What is his 10 race dealio? Brad Keselowski has a 26.4 average finish for the last 10 races. I'm not sure. So the only drivers that are worse than Brad Keselowski on the average finishes for the last 10 races is Cole Custer at 26.6. I mean, Ty Dillon has him beat by 4 spots. Shane Van Gisbergen at a 28.3 and a Cody Ware at a 31.2. So literally Worst on the list is Cody Ware. Next on the list is Shane Van Gisbergen, Cole Custer, and then Brad Keselowski. The fourth worst currently in NASCAR. That just something is not going right over at that sixth camp. Brian Preece, on the other hand, who literally is coming out of that same ownership at RFK, is having the best year he's ever had. But, I mean, here, once again, this is what I'm talking about when we talk about practices and just not having he's got a mishandling car. It's not balanced. He's all over the place. He's fast. He's super slow. He's better. He's slow. It's just super ragged. And that's concerning. And it's even more concerning. Like, I can understand a Chase Elliott being a little bit ragged and then fixing it because he's got one of the best average finishes of the year so far. But a Brad Keselowski being ragged and having one of the worst average finishes on the year is just two red flags in a row. You take one red flag, you can take a positive and a negative and be okay. You can't take a negative and a negative and make it better. It just doesn't work. So at this point, I don't think he gets to a 12th place average finish. If he does, that puts him close to being in the optimal lineup, but I doubt he's going to lead any laps. I mean, the only way he does that is if he do something really crazy on strategy, which, I mean, honestly, Brad Keselowski and RFK are going to have to start doing if they think or he's going to make the playoffs. Because at this point, he's not making it on points. So they're going to have to start just throwing Hail Marys. So, but for us, if he gets to 10th, starting 30th, and doesn't lead any laps, sure, he makes the optimal. So is he out of play completely? No. It's just, in my opinion, very, very risky. It's just as risky as taking Carson Hocevar starting from the pole position. Carson Hocevar and Michael McDowell come out and have crazy good practice speeds and crazy good qualifying speeds, and then just blow it after the race starts. I mean, his practice speeds, they're a little bit ragged, but they're ragged on the fast side. It's not like we're shooting way up. I mean, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 laps that are a little on the higher end, but still almost below average. But then he's literally from lap 18 to 31, he's beating Cedric and he's beating the average, like by a good 2/10. Now Carson Hocevar finished second in the truck race on Friday. He won the truck race 2 years ago. He has run this track extremely well. This is one of his better tracks. He finished 10th in this race at Texas last year. This is probably one of his best tracks. Could Carson Hocevar go out and stink up the show tomorrow? Absolutely. Would I be shocked and surprised? No. Am I willing to put him in a ton of lineups because I think he's going to dominate this race? I'll have a handful of lineups with Carson Hocevar in it, but it is so risky. But I mean, if there's a place for Carson Hocevar to have a dominant race, tomorrow could be it. And I'm going to kick myself if he does it, and I don't have a whole lot of ownership in him. I wonder what the betting markets have on him. Let's see. NASCAR betting odds. That's Daytona. I don't want Daytona. Let's see. Motorsports, NASCAR. Where is Carson Hocevar? 25 to 1. 2,500. 25 to 1. So bet $2, win 50. I might just put $2 on Carson Hocevar. I'm telling you, he's that good here at Texas. But it is just so risky because he's never done it before. And all of a sudden he's going to do it one time, and it's going to be like, oh crap, I didn't play him. Hey Matt, this is your 3% owned guy tomorrow. Actually, he may be 6 or 7%, but he's not going to be heavily owned. This could be a sleeper pick, and honestly, he could go out and stink the show. He could score 110 points at Texas because it just hasn't happened. And if anybody's going to do it, Carson Hocevar has the potential to do it, but it's ultra risky to think that happens. But you're playing in a large field tournament and he does it and nobody else is on him, I'm telling you, you're top 5 of the Chrome Horn. And you're cashing $1,000 plus. But it's ultra risky. I'll have him in a lineup. Or 2. Or 3. I also run 80 lineups, so for me to run 4, that's only 5% of my lineups. But I'll definitely have some lineups with Carson Hocevar in it. I'll have some lineups with Austin Cindric in it too. He's been my control car for the entire show tonight. Yeah, and he's coming off a win last week. He's feeling good. He was 11th in single lap. He was 1st in 10 lap consecutive average. Now, he doesn't run this track well at all. He's got a 17.5 finish over the last 4 races. Now, one of those was in the Lashin car. So, not super consistent here. He's starting from 3rd. So, just like Carson Hocevar, he is very risky. And this track has a tendency to just 2 drivers up. So, buyer beware. I do not think you run an Austin Cindric with a Carson Hocevar. Matt says, Hocevar is so risky, but man, I love playing the play. No one else is going to play it. Hocevar has burned both of it. Oh, yeah. Hocevar has destroyed me so many times. Well, not so many. Because typically when he's up, starts that high up, I just go, nope, not happening. He's going to wreck it. But I've also never seen Hocevar have this kind of speed in practice. This is next level speed. Now, I don't know what it does at lap 45. Does it fall off a cliff? I don't know. But he was really fast in the trucks on Friday. Yeah. I mean, Cindric too. I mean, you've got both these guys that are starting 1st and 3rd. So kind of like you were talking about earlier, do you run Byron and Cindric? Sure. Do you run a Byron and a Hocevar? Yeah. Do you run a Cindric and Hocevar? Yeah, if you really want to start to get different on your lineups. And maybe I would still bet that there would be a big one at Talladega, at the next Talladega race. Even though we just had one that said we just had one that didn't have a big one. But the averages are going to tell me otherwise. Just like the averages are going to tell me that Austin Cindric and Carson Hocevar are going to suck tomorrow. That's what the averages tell me. But if you play off the average, that's where you win money. So play the Matt game, play the Family Man game, see what happens. Ryan Preece, who finished 2nd at Talladega and then finished last, or looks like it didn't even show up. I don't know. Either way, he got disqualified because of, I don't know, some technical thing. Starting in 33rd. 13.5 average finish over the last 5 races at the 4 races we're comparing to. But at 26.3 at Texas. He finished 12th in this race last year. Well, practice speeds were just about like his partner in crime, Brad Kozlowski. super ragged. Nothing consistent about the practice speeds. We're also, I mean, once again, we're talking about literally less than a half a second on lap times, but it still shows much more raggedness than Austin Cindric. I like to see nice and flat and level. Slight increases each time where the tires are beginning to wear. But if Ryan Preece goes and finishes in 19th, not quite enough to get him to optimal lineup. He's also been running way better this year than he has run any other year. Can he finish? What did I say? 13th? Is that where he finished last year? He finished in 12th. So let's take his 12th place finish. 12th place finish, that gives him a 52.9. That puts him probably in the optimal at his price tag. If not, he's going to be 7th on the board. And that's without having any real fast laps and not without leading a lap. But his practice speeds were, I mean, they were faster than the average. I get that, but it's still, it's ragged. It's not super ragged. It's not as bad as Chase Elliott. But Ryan Preece, who finished second in the race last year, who's having quietly a really good year. What is his average finishing position? Ryan Preece average finish 16.5. Yeah, pretty good actually. I mean, better than, it's as good as Joey Logano's average finish. Better than Ryan Blaney's average finish. Ryan Blaney's had a rough year. So, yeah, Ryan Preece, can he go out and finish 12th? Yeah. Does that put him close to being optimal? Absolutely. Put him in cash? Absolutely. Daniel Suarez, starting in 25th at 6,900. He was 12th in single lap, 19th in 10 lap consecutive average. He's got an average finish of 8th at a 14.6 out of 13 total starts at Texas. I guess it's the Tex-Mex combination down there that is giving Daniel Suarez the extra spunk to do well at Texas. Because he also does well at COTA. I'm telling you, he might be a shoe-in pick for the Mexico City race. Other than, I did hear on the practice broadcast, Daniel Ricciardo into a cup car for Mexico City? And maybe the Trackhouse car? Huh. Love to see it. That would be so cool. Daniel Ricciardo is so much fun. He was probably my favorite in Formula One till he wasn't. Daniel Suarez kind of fell off a cliff in practice, so not great practice speeds here. Starting in 25th, you've got some room. I'm going to run some Daniel Suarez. You get to 12th and you're making the top 15, but you're not really making much headway. It's kind of it's kind of a safe cash play, to be honest. So right now, starting outside the top 30, Ryan Preece is kind of in a play. Don't love it. I don't love the Daniel Suarez play, but I'll have some ownership in him. Noah Gragson, starting in 18th, was pretty fast in practice. He was third. He came from the second group, which actually was the faster group in my opinion. But he was third in single lap, 14th, and 10 lap consecutive average. He finished 12th in this race last year. 22nd place average finish. I mean, kind of sounds like you're going to finish where you start. How's your practice look? I mean, not bad. A little more ragged than I'd like to see. But for the most part, he was under the average for a lot of laps. Inconsistently under the average, but still. So yeah, I don't love the raggedness of it, but it's really hard to say unless you're like literally dissecting every corner, every lap, who's around them. We're just kind of looking at a dotted line. And that's really what we're looking at. And I don't like the raggedness of it, but I think it's okay. He's going to need to do a lot, though, starting in 18th. Where did he finish? 12th? I don't think finishing in 12th does us any good at 37.45. It puts him 15th in points. I don't know. I don't think I like the Noah Gregson play. Eric Jones starting in 14th. He was 9th in single lap, 16th in 10 lap consecutive average. His average finish is 23.4, but at Texas it's a 13.4. Kind of same thing. He's got a little all over the board with practices, close to the average, not as good as Austin Cindric starting in 14th. He's kind of sitting in no man's land, in my opinion. I don't like the Eric Jones play because he's got to do really, really cool stuff, which he hasn't done in years. He'd have to get up to second. He'd have to have a top 3 with 8 fast laps to really kind of be in play. Is it possible? Sure. I just don't love it. I think AJ Allmendinger, though, is one of the ones that he has quietly finished where he starts all year long. What's his average finish? Where'd my little handy anything? Where's AJ Allmendinger? 17.4. That's not great. I thought he was doing a little bit better than that. So, I don't know. He just quietly recently has been kind of finishing in the top 10. Not top 8, top 10. So like 8th, 9th, 10th. And he's been qualifying 8th, 9th, 10th. And his practice speeds were actually faster than Cindric, and then he slips up a little bit, but he fired off really fast. Now, he was part of Group 1, which I would have thought would have fired off fast, and he was the fastest in the first group. But then we had some people who went faster. But then he fell off to 39th. Where did that happen? It must have been somewhere in here. He must have come in, fired off, and then pitted at about lap 8, went back out and fired off here, and then fell off there. It's a little hard to say, but he definitely kind of fell off if he was 39th in 10 lap consecutive average. That's pretty slow. So starting in 10th, get the average finish of 19th. He's kind of sitting in no man's land. But what happens if AJ finishes 8th? 38.9. It's still not enough. So I'm going to probably stay away from AJ this week. Austin Dillon starting in 19th. He's got a 21st place average finish and an 18.9 at 20 total starts. At Texas, he does have one win. I don't even know when that was. That must have been a long time ago. And this is really what I'm talking about being ragged. I mean, he jumps all the way up there, down here, all over the place. That picture's not right. That's a little better. But ragged, and he only did 19 laps of practice. Yeah. Even if he finishes where he starts, it's 22.7. Not interested. Michael McDowell starting in 5th. He was fast in practice, but once again, this is typical Michael McDowell. I'm going to practice really fast. I'm going to qualify really fast, and then I'm going to hit the wall by lap, 50, and my day's going to be done. Average finish at 25th at a minus 1.8. If we go off of his averages. And starting in 5th, it's too big of a hill to climb. It's no man's land for this kid, this guy. If he finishes first and leads 3 laps, it's a 50.2. I mean, at 6,300, that probably does put him close to the optimal, but do we really think Michael McDowell is going to go out and win Texas? When he's got an average finish of 36.8 over 22 total starts, has never finished in the top 10, and you think he's going to go win? No. It's not happening. So, yeah, not happening. Michael McDowell's out. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. starting in 34th. I mean, at least he's got one top 10 out of 21 total starts, but he's only got a 21.6 average finish. The 5 races we're comparing to a 21st place average finish. His practice speeds were, okay, a little ragged, but for the most part, it looks pretty consistent. For Ricky, if he gets to 21st, that puts him in the top 15 in points. If he can pull off 13th, 52.45. That at 6,200, that puts him really, really close to being in the optimal. And I'm telling you, this team, out of a lot of teams, love to throw Hail Marys. And that could easily put him in a top 10 spot. What happens if he gets to 10th? 58.4. That definitely puts him in the optimal at 6,200. It's a big ask. I get it. His practice speeds weren't all that bad. Qualifying stunk. Ton of place differential here. I'll have some Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I'll take a shot on it. Zane Smith starting in 32nd. Oof. What does his practice look like? 28th in single lap, 26th in 10 lap, starting 32nd. And it's really ragged. I think this is we're kind of going to get what we got with Zane. Can he make it up to his average finish of 20.8? What does that look like? Probably not great. 20th. 0. 35.45. Puts him in the top 15 in points, but I'm not sure that that's going to be enough. I mean, there's room to go, but that's a tough. Hold on. Both of these guys can't start in 32nd. Who's starting where? What did I do wrong here? Zane is starting in. I'll look at that here. Zane Smith is starting in 13th. Even better. With that raggedness in 13th? Nope. Zane's out. You're really starting in 13th. Did I make that up? Zane Smith. Nope, he's starting in 13th. Bye, Draftkings. Okay, yeah. I'm not even going to fool with it. He's out. So Zane's out. Todd Gillen, on the other hand, starting in 32nd, 34th in single lap, 33rd, and 10 lap consecutive average. I mean, there's nothing in here that says he's going to finish any better than where he starts. What's his practice look like? He didn't practice for very long. He only did 14 laps of practice. He did 26, but the most that'll show up that were under 30. Yeah, nope. Todd Gillen's out. That's not going to work. Yes, thank you, Matt. I got it. I know the chat's a little delayed from where I'm actually at, so I appreciate that. Thank you for looking. Justin Haley starting in 15th. He's got a better shot than Zane Smith. At least he did more practice laps, but he was definitely above the average line all the way across. So starting way up there, yeah, nope, you're out at a 22.9. John Hunter starting in 28th. Going back and watching that race from last year, John Hunter was involved in, I think, if not 3, it was 4 of the 12 cautions. So, yeah, this place and John Hunter do not get along real well. I mean, at least his average finish at Texas is a 21.7, so it's a little bit better. But starting in 28th, and his practice speeds, I mean, they weren't awful. That's not too bad. He got one little hiccup here, but he stayed with the average line for most of it. So that makes him in 15th. What does that do? 28th to 15th. Let's say he can get the average. 41.45. Puts him probably 12th. Is that enough at 5,600? It's risky, but it could be in play. I'll have somewhere between 5 to 8% ownership, but I'm probably not going to go much more than that. Cole Custer starting in 20th. Outkicked his coverage, in my opinion, and he's kind of ragged. He kind of straightens things out a little bit after this little raggedness start. Still above the average, and then he's starting kind of at average. Yeah, I don't trust that either. Yeah, he'd have to finish 8th, probably, to do anything right. 48.5. Yeah, that probably puts him, if he finishes 8th. If you think Cole Custer can finish in 8th, he's in play. I think he finishes 24th or worst. Riley Herbst, who actually ended up having a 3rd place finish today in the Xfinity race, I think, 2nd or 3rd, had a really good run. Not that correlates over very well to the Cup Series, but he's got he got a 19th place finish. I think that was at Vegas earlier this year. What was his practice looking like? Ugh, not great. Really, really ragged. But I mean, honestly, I'm still impressed that he did 34 laps of practice. I mean, this is a learning spot, and he's starting in 21st. That's starting too far up. In my opinion, he's starting 21st or 25th. Which one is it? Now let's pull this up. Riley Herbst starting 21st. Okay. Second guessing myself here. Yeah, it's just starting too far up. He'd have to finish kind of like Cole Custer. He needs to finish in the top 10. I mean, could Riley Herbst pull something like that off? Maybe. That's he hadn't done it so far. Until he does it, I don't know. I think we need a lot of attrition and him not to be part of the attrition for that to happen. Jesse Love in his 2nd start in the Cup Series, starting in 35th. He did 32 laps of practice, so good on him. But he's racing the 62 Beard Motorsport car. His practice speeds were, way off average. But I wouldn't expect anything different from Jesse Love right now. This is his 2nd Cup start in in anything other than a super speedway. This is a subpar car. Just calling it like it is. Beard Motorsports puts together some of the best super speedway cars, but they really should just stop there. I mean, maybe go run Michigan, but on that, I think this is a funding out of Richard Childress, and they just needed the car. But I think this is just a learning curve for Jesse Love. So I think they're just flip-flopping Jesse Love and Austin Hill into this car to give him practice. Because I think, if I'm going to guess, I think Austin Dillon either retires after this year or next year. And then at that point, it's going to be, does Jesse Love or does Austin Hill get moved up into that spot? Just my guess. Or do they end up going to a 3rd team and putting one of those in there? Because pretty much, how long does Kyle Busch stay at Richard Childress? Not real sure. Ty Dillon, starting in 23rd, has an average finish of 18.6 or 16th. But oh my God, look at this. This is a mess. This is a mishandling car. He'll clean this up. But starting in 23rd, $5,100, you can pay for a whole lot of expensive guys doing that. If he gets to 19th, that's a 20.45. He's gonna need to get to 12th to be playable. Maybe 13th. Does 13th work? We'll go 14. 14 probably actually plays too. That's tough. Shane Van Gisbergen starting in 37th. His practice speeds were 36th, 34th. He was as bad as Jesse Love in practice. I have absolutely no interest in SVG. This is just, he is there as a place card holder until we get to a road course, and hopefully he just goes and wins. Cody Ware, same thing, 36th, 35th, 33rd. His practice speeds were all over the place. I have no interest. I have no interest in any of these guys. From Shane Van Gisbergen, Cody Ware, and I didn't even do a card holder for Chad Fincham. I'm not even sure what car number he's driving. Could care less. He won't finish the race. He won't finish, and unless the entire field wrecks on lap 2, and he happens to be so slow off the gate, does he not finish in 38th or wherever he's starting? That is much of a joke as having Leggett come out here and race. Just, we need to stop. I mean, at least a Jesse Love is going to be smart enough to know where to run and how to run and stay out of people's way. And if he thinks that he's starting to become in somebody's way, he's going to be like, I'm getting off of this track. I don't feel like being the idiot that caused the crap we're seeing. NASCAR needs to get these guys off the track. If they can't do the job, don't do it. I don't know. All right, so let's break it down. Who do I really like? I really like, especially for place differential, Tyler Reddick, Ross Chastain, Chase Elliott. Potential dominators, I definitely like William Byron as my first choice. I'm telling you want to throw some long shots, throw some real zingers. Go after an Austin Cindric and Carson Hocevar. That's going to be a real interesting play. Kyle Larson could easily dominate. He was on the process or the possibility of dominating last year until they didn't screw the tire in. I mean, that could happen to any of these drivers, because not all pit crews are perfect. It'd be nice if they were. But Kyle Larson was super fast. He could easily dominate. I think William Byron is probably the safest of the potential dominators. Coming from the back, Ross Chastain and Chase Elliott are probably the two safer plays to come from the back to make it up front. Good, consistent run. I mean, Ty Dillon could easily do it, but it's a little risky starting in 23rd. But he's so cheap. Yeah, this is actually going to be kind of a little bit of a tough lineup, because the top 10 drivers, any of those top 10 could easily do it. And then who do you put behind it? And that gets real interesting. Ty Dillon could easily be there. Stenhouse Jr. actually could be potential, because all he's got to do is finish 15th. Preece has had a really decent year. Does he continue? Does he improve? He's looking for a little bit of redemption from last week. I don't know. Victorious. AJ Allmendinger, so consistent in finishes. Josh Berry, consistent in pace. They're both consistent in qualifying too. Yes. Agreed. AJ... The problem is, if we're looking to make optimal lineups, AJ starting in 10th is not going to get there with a 38.9. He's going to need a top 3. And I get it. AJ's super consistent. But the problem is he's super consistent at being in 9th. Well, 36.9 is a 14th point getter on the day. Does that play in cash? Yeah, maybe. Does it score in a tournament? No. Unless something really wonky happens, but that's not going to play either. How does this work? I usually only do Fantasy Live. Okay, so Draftkings is way different than Fantasy Live. Fantasy Live is pretty much stage points and finishing position. And that's it. Other than your little side bets at the bottom. This is based... So if we're looking at AJ Allmendinger here. So AJ is a great pick for your fantasy lineup. For your Fantasy Live lineup. Absolutely. Very consistent. Good, solid pick. And if you're playing DraftKings, so there's a difference between tournament lineups and cash lineups. Cash lineups, when somebody says they're playing in a cash lineup, it's what they call a double up. So it's typically 1v1. So it's my lineup versus your lineup. And what you're looking for is the most consistent lineup that's very risk adverse. AJ Allmendinger is very risk adverse because exactly what you just said. Josh Berry, AJ Allmendinger, super consistent. They kind of finish where they start, and they don't really cause a whole lot of problems. I'd argue with you a little bit on the Josh Berry thing. AJ Allmendinger, super consistent this year. Really good pick for your fantasy live, actually. So good point. But for DraftKings, it's completely different. Stage points do not matter at all. It is literally start position to finish position. And a finish position, so finishing in 9th will give him 35 points. It'll give him an additional point for place differential, which is the 36 points. But then also DraftKings does what they call fast laps. So whoever the fastest driver for every lap of the race, that's at speed, not caution laps. So typically for this race tomorrow will be about 220 laps of fast laps. And the same thing with laps led. So laps led will only give you 0.25 points here. Fast laps are 0.45 points. So it gets a lot more up and downy. So AJ starting in 10th, finishing in 9th, gives you 37.15 points. Okay, so now let me get back up here. So when we're looking at what we call optimal lineups in DraftKings, this is what an optimal lineup looked like last year at Texas. This is very nuanced. There's a lot of detail that goes into this, but there's a lot of big money. I've won, I don't know, $25,000, $30,000 over the last 3 years playing DraftKings. That's why I now do a video. As you can see, you're looking for starting positions to finishing positions, but you're looking for a total points of 47 points or higher for the optimal, and that's with a really cheap Ty Dillon. Down here, it's 50 points with a really cheap Chase Briscoe and Ricky Stenhouse Jr., but you see where they're starting and where they're finishing. Victoria says, Josh Berry definitely crashes too much. I agree, even though he is one of my favorites. Yeah, no, Josh Berry is absolutely one of my favorites. In fact, I got to sit next to him at an Xfinity race here in Richmond. I live in Richmond for an entire Xfinity race last year. It was super, super down to earth, super great guy. I became an instant fan. It's not that I didn't like him before, but once I sat with him for an entire race and kind of got to pick his brain, he's really, really, really good. But to be fair, he crashed. Yeah, he does crash a lot. And it wasn't his fault. Well, yes and no. I mean, Daytona, Atlanta may or may not have been his fault because those are super speedways. Martinsville, Darlington, Miami. Guess what? I do a lot of iRacing too. And the one thing that we tell each other when we're racing, because I do a lot of league racing, is just like everyone else, I've got a steering wheel, I've got a brake pedal, and I've got a gas. I'm not always at fault. Could I have avoided that wreck? Yeah, probably half of my wrecks that I've been in, I probably could have avoided. But I was trying to push a little harder than I maybe needed to. Josh Berry has a tendency to do that. I don't like the guy, so don't get me wrong. But, so back to what I was saying about how DraftKings works. It's very nuanced on whether you're paying cash lineups or tournament lineups. These are tournament optimal lineups that we're looking at. You don't need to get 373 points in a day to win a cash lineup because that's typically a 1v1, and you're going to go for safe bets. You're going to go for a Tyler Reddick starting in 4th, finishing in 4th. You know, depending on practice speeds, because every year is a little bit different. Crew chiefs change, cars change, setups change. So Yeah, this is much more of a DraftKings lineup show. I'm more than happy to answer questions when it comes to Fantasy Life because I do play that also, and I do enjoy it. It's just a different nuanced. Um, and there's very, very few drivers in NASCAR that I don't like. Um, but I can appreciate their skills. Like, for example, I really do not like Joey Logano. Just don't like him. Have liked him forever and ever and ever, and it's just so hard. I can appreciate that he's a 3-time champion. I can appreciate the tracks that he's really fast at. But I just have a thing with Joey Logano. I just don't like him. And it's taken me a long time to like Brad Keselowski. And poor Ryan Blaney. I really do like Ryan Blaney, but because he's part of the Penske camp, it's just been kind of tough. So, yeah. So, please come back and watch the channel. I'll be more than happy to answer what I consider cash lineups, which are probably much more geared towards NASCAR Fantasy Live type lineups. And I've thought about doing a Fantasy Live show like on a Thursday because I can literally do that in about 20 minutes. Where this show, I mean, I'm now at 2 hours. There's just a lot of information, a lot of detail, and we're looking at practice speeds. Now, all this stuff can translate over, sure, but this is a much more detailed show. In fact, I probably have the longest explanation for DraftKings show probably out there. It's very long. It's very thorough. It's very detailed. And we go over lots of different scenarios and what ifs. And I get it. So yeah, if you come in and you want to know, hey, who do you like for Fantasy Live? I can tell you who is, when we're doing driver breakdowns, you can look. Ty Dillon has an average finish of 18.6 for the 5 races that we're comparing to, which is Texas for the last 3 races, Vegas earlier this year, and Kansas of last year. Out of the 12 total starts that Ty Dillon has had, he's got a 20.6 average finish at Texas. So a lot of these things will translate to Fantasy Live as well if you can pick the nuances out. So hopefully that helps. But I appreciate you tuning in. Hopefully you can subscribe and hit the like button. We're here every Saturday, most Saturday nights, throughout the season, breaking all the practice information down, qualifying, and kind of looking at building lineups. So other than that, if anybody has any more questions, thoughts, or concerns, please hit me up. I will definitely answer post this show and answer them throughout the morning tomorrow. Other than that, good luck with your lineups, whether you're playing tournaments, cash lineups, or Fantasy Live setups. I appreciate you tuning in, and we will see you guys next Saturday to discuss Kansas. Yep, we're going to go and fly around some tornadoes. But I tell you what, there have been more tornadoes in and around Dallas-Fort Worth than there have been over there. One last question from Victorious. I think Ricky Stenhouse would be a good pick in DraftKings from what I've learned just now. He's starting from the back and would probably move up. Yes, you're picking up pretty quickly here. So Ricky Stenhouse, let's find Ricky's page here. Where did Ricky go? Okay, so Ricky Stenhouse. We'll just kind of break this down since you're asking. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. So he's number one. He's inexpensive. He's $6,200. That's the other thing with DraftKings is you get a total budget of $50,000 to spend on 6 drivers. So Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is $6,200. And Kyle Larson is $11,000. Or William Byron is, I think, $10,800. But either way, you were asking about Ricky Stenhouse Jr. to possibly move up. So he's starting in 34th. Now we look at his practice speeds of 19th and 17th. Okay, both pretty good. We look at the average finishes. Now, once again, this is the last 3 Texas races, Vegas, and Kansas. Or his total full history at Texas is 21.6. So We think his average finish probably is going to be somewhere in the 21st to 22nd, 23rd range. And this is why I'd like to do my little chart down here, because 34th has his starting spot. So if we take his average and we think he's going to finish, let's say 21st. And he has, a couple fast laps. We'll even give him 4. 35.8. That probably puts him in the top 15 of Draftkings points. That's probably not going to put him in optimal, but that doesn't... So this would be a decent cash play if we think he's going to finish in 21st. Because really what we're looking for is, do we think that Ricky Stenhouse Jr., because of his price point, would make an optimal lineup? And once again, that goes back to the chart I was showing earlier with this. 47, 50, and 52 were optimal lineup bottom points. Whereas, this gets really nuanced here. I'm going to start to really probably give you a headache here. This is the top 15 in points in their starting spots, and their top 15 point total they had to get to was 34, 38, 32, 32. So an average of 34. All right, let's go back to Ricky again. So this is where it gets just, you could spend hours and hours and hours trying to just build 3 lineups just to find the best lineups. Ricky Stenhouse, there he is. All right, so we go back to here, 35.8. That puts him in the top 15 in points. Probably not enough to get to the optimal, but we have some wrecks, we have some issues. Ricky Stenhouse misses it, or his pit crew decides to take 2 tires instead of 4 and gets him some track position, and he gets to 12th. Well, now he's in the optimal lineup, and that's what you're looking for. Do you think Ricky Stenhouse Jr. can be 12th to 15th, which would probably get him real close to that optimal lineup? Well, optimal lineups, if you can nail an optimal lineup and you put it in the right tournament, you can win $100,000 if you put it in the right tournament. Most of the tournaments I run, the first place is like 10, 15, or 20 grand. I'm still not going to argue with 10, 15, 20 grand on a typically $5 to $10 bet. So. Matt goes, it's the best show in DFS. Mark is consistently in the top. Yeah, I appreciate that, Matt. Matt's my cheerleader. That's all I can say. Yeah, what I expected was guys like Larson, Byron, Blaney, up front, Crash, assuming it's a wreck fest like Truck and Xfinity. I agree with you though. Thanks. Oh yeah, you're more than welcome. All indications are, the Truck race and Xfinity race were both a little bit on the wreckish fest, but as you probably realized, and if you remember last year's and the year before races at Texas, it's typically not big packs of wrecks. It's single car, 2 car, max of 3. And because of the way the next gen car is built, they're not getting completely destroyed. So they're able to continue to run. Now they're probably out of the contention of winning, but yeah, the Xfinity car definitely got beat up today quite hard. And I think there was only one wreck that had 4 or 5 cars. So, but if you go back and watch the last couple of Cup races, it's been mostly single and 2 car incidences. It still plays in. And that's why those averages kind of look the way they do. That's why Ty Dillon has a pretty good finish here, because he takes care of his equipment, takes care of his car, and lets the 8 to 9 cars wreck. And if he started in 32nd, he's now finishing 22nd. And in Draftkings, at his price tag, it might be enough to at least do something well in cash and probably do okay in tournaments. So, and it's a lot of nuances. I've been doing Draftkings DFS probably for 10 years now. And I still I've gotten more consistent, but there's still weekends that I just go, whoops, I completely missed the boat on that. But either way, good luck. I need to get off of here. I got a couple things I need to do before I go to bed. And I'm now 2 hours and 10 minutes into this. So I try to keep them under 2 hours. I try to keep them about an hour and a half, but because I've started breaking down all the points totals and stuff, which I think is good, but it's definitely created a long night. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. Make sure you hit the like, subscribe button. We will see you guys next Saturday night for Kansas. Hopefully we don't get stuck up by a storm. Either way, thanks. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend. Good luck. Bye.
Gentlemen, start your engines. 40 cars coming to life.
Can you still pace the field? Yep. Love it. Get a good deep breath. Get ready to roll here.
Only about one thing tonight, getting the W's, so gotta be around the end to do that.
Get ready to roll tonight, boys. Go out the fun. Don't get me any more fired up than I already am.
All the way to the checkered. You're fine. Nobody's got to run. Checker five, baby! Really proud of you, man. Drug your butt off tonight. We had the best car here, bud.
Yeah, boys. Way to rebound. Great job. Great job, bud. Really good job. Appreciate you hanging in there with us all weekend.
What a weekend. Good job. Thank you.